Welcome to the Reporters Square Table presented by Lending Tree. This is our bubble edition. I'm Matt Rochinski from Hornets.com. As you can see, we are being joined by a very special guest today. Even though we can't see all of her face, we're going to make sure that she's adhering to protocols inside the NBA bubble. Yes, folks, that is Stephanie Reddy, formerly of the Charlotte Hornets, and now with NBA on TNT, covering things out there in the bubble. And as always, joining us, John Foki, the radio voice of the Charlotte Hornets, and Sam Purley from Hornets.com. It's great to see you guys all. It's not only bubble week opening up, but it was also our week of service in partnership with Bank of America here for the Hornets. Great things going on. Stephanie, I want to start with you, obviously, because we haven't had a chance to talk to you in a while. But week of service was something that you were a part of here with the Hornets for those first 5 years. To see them now go to a full, it started out as a day of service, now a week of service, and incorporate things like Black-owned businesses while also making sure we're getting out there and touching the community. How cool is that to see for you?
It's awesome. And first, I just want to say hi to everybody. It's so good to see everybody. I miss all of my Hornets family, so this is very exciting for me. And the mask, so forgive me if I sound a little muffled, but this is mandatory. I'm trying to stay here. I don't want to get kicked out. But to answer your question, Matt, it's amazing. I mean, you know, the Hornets organization has always done a terrific job of staying involved in the community, and Michael Jordan in particular has made it one of his main pillars to do it consistently. So it's only fitting that to extend the day of service to a week of service, and especially now incorporating Black-owned businesses. I think it's really important to unite the community. I know some people may be put off by that sentiment, thinking it's creating more division, but I think it does the opposite. I think you want to inspire growth and prosperity across all communities, and that's how we all get better.
John and Sam, you guys have been a part of this as we've gone through this week. Can just start with you, John. Can you just talk about how things have been received and how great of a week this has been so far out in the community?
Well, what I think is most impressive about it is it's hitting so many different areas. You brought up the Black-owned businesses, but it's also hitting frontline workers. It's also hitting essential workers. It's hitting underprivileged folks in the community. And so, you know, this day of service extended over a week is having an impact in so many different areas because of that I just love it. And the videos that the video department has put together have been outstanding. The recaps of each day going out to the businesses, the spotlights on the Black-owned businesses. I know when Sam and I were watching those, both of us were like, man, I am so hungry right now. I am so ready to go find one of these businesses and get some of this food. That I just think it's done a tremendous job in the way that it has impacted so many different levels of our community.
Yeah, and Sam has been doing a tremendous job writing some of those pieces. Great work out there, Sam. Make sure you guys are checking it out on Hornets.com to see what Sam Purley's had to say as we've been doing these features on all these businesses. But we've also noticed out in the bubble where Stephanie is that things have, you know, obviously changed, but it's also provided a great platform for the things that are going on in society right now. Stephanie, I just want to throw it to you. And from what you've seen inside the bubble, how important has that been to give these guys, players, coaches, whoever it might be, that platform to speak their mind freely?
It's so important if you're a member of the media, because if you recall when this concept first started getting talked about, players, some of them expressed their opinion that they were having concerns. Maybe they don't want to go into the bubble. Maybe they don't want to become a distraction for the movement. But I think it's been the opposite. I think this platform is probably as big as they'll ever get. Right now, the world, especially our country, has missed live sports. And the NBA is one of the more popular sports. Their personalities are the most popular in terms of sports. So I think this platform has been perfect. Every practice session, I've heard gentlemen talking about justice for Breonna Taylor. I mean, Marcus Smart, he answers every question. He starts off with that. Some players won't even answer the basketball questions. They will only make their statement imploring change or whatever their cause is that they believe in. And they thank the press because they're not trying to create animosity, but they're just trying to say only their social justice piece and then get back to playing. I think it's amazing.
One thing that has been so important is consistency in delivering the message. And by allowing these players to deliver their message in multiple medias, that seems as if it's allowing for that consistency to continue on. Sam, as you're watching this, how important do you think this is in this time to kind of see the message that the NBA is spreading?
I think it's really cool, and I think it's awesome that the NBA allows them to do that. Obviously, they've been very progressive in past years about players letting speak their mind. I think one of the coolest things is everybody's got kind of a different message. It could be something about education. It could be something about voting. It could be Black Lives Matter. You've got guys with sayings in different languages on the back of their jersey. So it's really, really cool that, that's kind of a way to tell a story. I look at this player and education is important to him, or voting is important to me. And I think what's really impressive is this isn't something, like you said, the consistency, it hasn't stopped. It hasn't been a 1 or 2 week kind of fad. The players are continuing to push this every single press conference throughout it. And it's just, I think they've done a great job of not only, fighting for the right to be able to do this, but also taking with it and sustaining it over the long run as this bubble kind of continues to, unwind.
Outside of all the issues that are happening off the court, we've gotten back on the court. Basketball is back. We're seeing live action. We're seeing real games. It's been tremendous to see so far. I've been surprised at how competitive it's been from the jump. These guys have had a little bit of a layoff. I guess we'll start with you, Stephanie, since you're seeing it firsthand. What you're seeing out there, have you been surprised at the intensity that these guys are bringing to this game right now, despite all the changes?
I have been a little bit surprised. I knew it would go one of two ways, right? It would either be very ugly basketball because everyone was so rusty, or else it was going to be what we're seeing now, this high-level playoff type atmosphere because they're so ready to get back to playing and eager to show that they're ready to get into the playoffs. So I think it's been really interesting to see, no matter who is playing, that the matchup seems as if it's the first round. These I know are 8 seeding games that each team gets, but it seems as if every team is playing as if they're already in the playoffs. Now, teams like the Portland Trail Blazers obviously have got to play with some fire because they're still trying to get into those top 8 positions. But there's some teams that are well clinched. There's really no room that they can move. But they see how important this is because now this is a launching pad to get going.
How much do you guys think, we'll start with you, John, how much do you think that seeing what we're seeing right now is just going to elevate itself as we get even closer and closer and these scenarios are playing out when people are getting knocked out as they get ready to set up the playoffs?
No, absolutely. I think what's been most fun to me is every morning you wake up and you think back to the games that happened the night before and you go, oh, I'm high on this team. This team's going to be the one that makes a run. And then the next morning you wake up and you go, you know what? I'm not so high on them anymore. Now I'm super high on this one. And I think that's what's made this so entertaining. And, Sam and I talked about it, and I just talked to Ronald Norad, Hornets assistant coach, and we've all kind of compared it to a March Madness type feel because in the middle of the afternoon you can pop on a game and you can watch games all the way until you fall asleep. And kind of tied into that is each and every day you're looking at it and going, now this team, this is the Cinderella team. They're going to make it. And I think that's made it a ton of fun. And the basketball was good, that opening night, that opening Thursday night, and it's just gotten better. And I love how it seems like, again, back to a March Madness feel, every single game is coming down to the wire. Every game is so close that it's just been a ton of fun through this first week. And I think it's only going to get better.
All right, John, you open up the door, so let's walk through it. What have people's impressions been of these teams as they've come out? We've seen some teams, like you said, who have surprised. A team like maybe Phoenix Suns, who's won 3 games in a row and got a buzzer beater the other last night. Are they a team that's kind of surprised you? Who's been your biggest surprise, and who do you think might kind of sneak in there and still have a shot to maybe make it into the playoffs? I'll start with Sam since we haven't gone him first.
Well, I say not necessarily a team that's surprised, but I think a team that's looked really good is the Toronto Raptors. I think they're 2-0 already. They beat the Lakers. They beat the Heat. I think this is a team people are sleeping on a little bit because they did lose Kawhi Leonard. I think their record is actually better right now than it was at this point last year without Kawhi Leonard. Very, very good defensive team. They've got a lot of championship experience. And then a team I think that's going to kind of sneak it in right now is Portland. I think they're a couple plays away from being undefeated. They almost completed a big comeback against Boston the other day. All you got to do is get into that 8-9 spot. And then once you're in there, if you're the 9 seed, you win 2 and you're in, and anything happens. So, and they're fully healthy as well. So those are kind of 2 teams right now I'm kind of marking down, saying, when are they playing? And right now I am high on them, as John says.
Stephanie brought up Portland earlier. Now Sam brings up Portland. So Portland sounds like a team to watch. I want to ask Stephanie, your first game that you had a chance to cover was the Celtics against the Heat. Shockingly, they gave you Kemba Walker for your first game over there in the bubble. So I think that worked out pretty well. The Celtics didn't end up winning the game, but that Miami and that Boston kind of combo, do you see one of those 2 teams as maybe being a favorite in the East right now?
Well, I would say no to the favorite part of that question. I think Milwaukee and Toronto are the favorites coming out of the East, but I will say that Miami and Boston are going to be really interesting. Boston, because they haven't really been healthy, right? Gordon Hayward was making his way back to becoming 100% himself right when the hiatus started. So that was when we were like, oh, wait a minute, here he comes. He's coming back to being himself. And then we stopped playing. So we're going to watch that. Kemba Walker is now getting back to his max minutes, right? They're building him up. So we still haven't seen Boston where they will be, where they hope to be anyway, when the playoffs start. I think Miami Heat, the same thing. They had Kendrick Nunn and Bam Adebayo start a little late, right, because of COVID. And now you had Jimmy Butler miss that last game. They played very well without him, but they're going to need all of their pieces of the puzzle. So I think those 2 teams, it'll be interesting to see how they mesh these last seeding games before the playoffs start. But I'm excited about all of these East teams. I think everyone's eyes on the West because it's so top-heavy in the West with the 2 LA teams. But I think the East is going to be knocked down, drag them out, fun playoff basketball.
Would you agree, John? What's something that's kind of surprised you?
I think what surprised me, obviously Sam brought it up, or someone did, the Phoenix Suns. You know, they were sort of an afterthought when we thought about the 22 teams coming in, and they've gone down to the Orlando bubble. They've made the most of their opportunity. They had the game winner, as you mentioned, Matt, against the LA Clippers, but that was a team that started the season so well, then went through, a dry spell, and all of a sudden they get this extra life, and they're making the most of it. I think that's been a big surprise. And then I love what Stephanie said about the East. Like, don't sleep on the East. I covered teams in the Western Conference, and we talked about the Western Conference being so good for so long. But now that I've had an opportunity to cover the East, like, these teams are fun. They're competitive. I think there's not, obviously Milwaukee's got the best record and is maybe head and shoulders above everybody. But beyond that, you could flip a coin between Boston, Toronto, Miami. I mean, there's so many competitive teams in the Eastern Conference that I think that is going to be very, very fun and very, very competitive once we get into it.
We've also seen that teams are playing some different styles of basketball out there right now. When you've got this kind of condensed schedule, kind of like you were talking, maybe it's a tournament type format. There's more games, things are happening quicker. Do you think that some of the things you've been noticing, there's been some small ball lineups that have been out there with Houston, San Antonio. There's been some teams running bigger lineups out there, maybe trying to wear people down like in Denver. Stephanie, for you, do you think that one or other of these strategies and tactics is really going to work in this given situation, how things are just different with this condensed schedule?
Right. I think it will be interesting to see that. I don't really subscribe to the gimmicky style of play, just in general, principally. But I do think that you have to give yourself the best opportunity to win. So if your best players all happen to be smaller, or in the case of Denver, all taller, then obviously go with that. But you have to know who you are as a team. So whatever your identity is, it's now you have to double down on that. You have to make sure that you're going to be good and execute to the fullest of your ability, whatever that is, fill in the blank there. I think a team like the Miami Heat has kind of changed their identity as this season evolved. Remember in the very beginning, when Myers Leonard were starting, they had one of the best starting lineups when you look at statistics. Now he's not even playing, right? They've changed their lineup, but they've changed their style of play. They've got shooters out there, which is something you never thought you'd say about the Miami Heat team in the East. They've got long-distance, consistent shooters. And they have slashers and they have defenders, so, and they're still tough-minded. So I think that once you figure out who you are and that gives you your best chance to win, then that's what you have to play with.
Sam, have any of these other teams kind of piqued your radar in terms of the way that they're going out there and playing basketball? And I would like to note that I am not surprised that Stephanie, who is a coach at heart and will always be a coach at heart, didn't like to talk about gimmicky stuff. I just want to point that out. That's definitely the coach coming out in you, Stephanie, no doubt.
For sure.
So, Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I kind of second Stephanie a little bit. I wouldn't say that the gimmicky offenses, is that going to something that can work for a 7-game series? You can catch somebody maybe on an off night with an all-big lineup or an all-small lineup, but there's a lot of smart coaches and staffs in this league that can adjust quickly. And you saw it last night with Portland. If size is going to sometimes win just 9 times out of 10. So something really crazy, and this is kind of just the teams in general. There is a lot of offense in these games, and I don't know if it's a combination of the offense really clicking, everyone's fresh, the pace is up, or the defense just hasn't caught up. But I think right now, when the season first got suspended, there were 2 teams, offensive efficiency over 113. It was Dallas and Houston. Right now, there's 11 teams over that. Right now, that's half the bubble is running at a top 2 offensive rating in the league right now. So shot making, defense lacking, maybe a combination of each, but a lot of people look really fresh right now. And I think as you get into the postseason, the defense will kind of pick up and things will start to slow down. You'll see that traditional playoff basketball again.
All right, I'd be remiss then if I don't ask Stephanie, hearing Sam's kind of take on it. After these games, do you think these guys can keep up this intensity at this level this consistently? Or after games, are we seeing them kind of dragging that we're not seeing as we're watching things on the court?
No, I think you'll see it. So, I mean, right now there's some players running by because they're about to go out to play. I think the intensity level is going to actually go higher. I think that with traditional basketball scheduling that we've seen in the years past, you try to see people kind of save themselves for the playoffs. They pace themselves, and then you have to worry about traveling, especially when you're talking about playoff series because you're going maybe a longer distance than a normal game. Here, that's not a problem. They're literally all 5 minutes away from the arena. So when the playoffs start, you're probably going to see games every other night in series. Less time for air travel recovery. You can get back to your bed quicker. Whatever it is that you do to recover, that process can begin quicker, and you have a longer time before you have to leave again. So I think you're going to see it at this level the whole time.
All right, we're about to see a lot of things shake out as things kind of break down here. So I'm not going to ask anyone for their playoff predictions just yet. I think it's still too early to see how things are going. It's only been a week. But what I do want to ask you guys is, and Stephanie, you're living it right now. We're seeing a different way that the NBA has been covered. The league has done a tremendous job working with TNT, working with broadcasts in order to bring this broadcast to our fans and give them some sort of a sense of normalcy. And it's been great just to see NBA basketball. But there's been a lot of changes. We've seen virtual fans. We've seen different ways that fans are interacting on social media throughout the course of games. What are some things that have really – one thing that really has stood out to you, Stephanie, in covering it over there?
Well, just our direct access. Because of the rules and the safety protocols, and they're there for good reason, obviously, but you just don't have as much direct access to players and coaches that you normally do when you're at the game venue. They're doing the best they can, allowing us to have conversations that are kind of sidebar conversations. But for me, especially as a reporter covering a live action game, I'm used to being able to just pretty much go wherever I want to get to the story, whether it's listening in a huddle, observing someone in the back hallway as they limp away because of an injury. Those things are kind of off limits now because you have got to stay in a very specific area. It's challenging, but I'm so glad that we're able to bring the game back inside people's homes. So I'm happy to do a coach interview 6 feet apart. And even if I have to yell into the microphone so they can hear me through the mask, I'm okay with that. It's not the most comfortable thing I've ever had to do, but I'm thrilled to be a part of the NBA coming back.
Yeah, I don't know if asking us media members to get even louder over the course of this is the best thing to do. Most of us tend to be pretty loud ourselves. Overall, though, for you guys, Sam, John, what have been one thing that you guys might have noticed? John, we'll go to you, and something that's really stood out.
Well, I think number one, there's a lot of challenges that the broadcasters are working their way through, whether it's Stephanie and the national teams that are in the bubble, or it's the regional sports networks and the radio folks that are not in the bubble and that are calling games from their arenas or calling games from their homes. And I've listened to and watched a number of games, and I think what stands out is you don't notice it. These folks have done a tremendous job of just jumping all in and not complaining about it, calling the game in a way that they're on point, the conversation goes, the play-by-play is good, and never saying like, oh, I'm sorry, we missed that because we're at home. We're not. Like, you don't notice it unless you were like really sitting down, paying attention, to try and sync it up and everything. You don't notice it. And I think that's number one. Everybody's just been incredibly professional about it and putting out a great product. And then number two is something that we talked about a little earlier, and that is the coverage of racial injustice and social injustice. And it's the players, it's the coaches that are talking about this in their interview sessions, but it's also on the broadcast. It's not something that's glossed over. It's something that's brought up, that you can see the Black Lives Matter on the court. It becomes a conversation. It brings in sideline reporters to give background on certain players and what is on their jerseys. And so I think that's so important in keeping that conversation going. It's not, in game one, we're going to talk about it and then we're just going to move on. I think the broadcast partners, the league, the players, everybody has done a tremendous job of keeping that message going and keeping that conversation front and center.
That's tremendous, the message that is being sent, no doubt. Sam, for you, is there anything that's really kind of stood out when you've been watching these games?
I mean, I think John nailed it. It's like you don't even notice it anymore. I think the first couple games, it looks a little weird. It's got like a summer league vibe to it. But then when they start putting in the virtual fans and, you look at the basketball players, it's like, hey, this is the same game. It's the same players, same coaches. They're still taking it, it's like we mentioned, the intensity. It's all kind of the same. When Devin Booker hits the buzzer beater last night, you see social media just light up with highlights, and it's just like, normal time. So I think that's really cool. I think it's really cool that, I think Stephanie mentioned it as well, is like the sense of normalcy of basketball. They're doing everything. Everyone's buying into this right now. Players, coaches, broadcasters, everything. And, this is something that is really helping a lot of people right now kind of bring a little bit of a sense of normalcy in a very weird world right now. So overall, it's been outstanding. The NBA has done a great job so far.
And if we want to talk about some other content that I've seen coming across feeds, let's talk about Miss Stephanie Reddy for a second here as well. On top of all of this basketball coverage, on top of everything we've talked about up until now, she is also running on her social media account a bubble bakery bracket right now. Is this something that has kind of emerged in the bubble? Stephanie, kind of just let us know what's going on, because from what I hear, people can start voting on this soon.
Yes, thank you, Matt, for bringing this up. So it just kind of happens organically, because when you get here in the bubble, you have to quarantine for 7 days. And I think people that are not here don't fully understand what that means. They think it means, oh, you're just in your hotel, but you're getting tested every day. No, it means I cannot leave my room for 7 days. And the only time I can leave is to get a test. And for me, it was unfortunate. The testing room was directly next door. So I literally walked out 2 steps to get my test, and then 2 steps back to my room for 7 days. So they deliver your food to you 3 times a day. And some of these pastries were just amazing. And so I started photographing them, because I was thinking, okay, eventually I'm going to get out of here. So what are we going to be talking about? Everyone was posting their food. I thought that was kind of, cliche and passé at this point. And I knew we were so eager for the playoffs to start. And I was like, maybe we can create a different kind of bracket. So that's what I did. I posted those, and they're all up now. I'm waiting to count for seeding purposes, but everybody's votes will count. And then I'll rank them 1 through, I think it's 14 of them that are out now, and I'll seed them against each other, and we'll have a bracket and see who's the champion in the end.
Well, there we go. Everybody go out and give Stephanie Reddy a follow on Twitter. Make sure you can get in on that. It's been absolutely great connecting with you, Stephanie. John, Sam, thank you guys for joining us as always. Thank you all out there for joining us on this special edition of the Reporters Square Table presented by Lending Tree, our bubble edition. For Stephanie, for Sam, for John, I'm Matt Ruczynski for Hornets.com. We'll see you next time.